as you just saw, poured myself a shot of Jack Daniel's Tennessee Fire. So cheers to day 2 of completing Carpenter. Oh, that was like having oh, what were they called? The hot jawbreakers. Like that felt like having one of those in liquid form, shot down my throat and up through my nostrils. Really nice. So that's about it. No, there's one more thing. There's one more thing which is really interesting. This is why I love doing these things. This is just such an interesting oddity that I had no idea about with this Blu-ray, and it's not listed on the back of the cover either. So let's take a look. So this is I guess the pre-menu screen for Someone's Watching Me, and it says aspect ratio. So you can choose between 185:1, which is widescreen, or 133:1, which is side matted. Now, if you look at the widescreen, it fills the whole screen. The side matted doesn't, so there's black bars on the side. It doesn't look like it's a full kind of, or maybe it is square. I'm not sure actually how much 133:1 is. I'm not completely an expert on those aspect ratios, but regardless, if you look closely, you can see that there is more of the image on the side matted version. So I want as much image as possible. I don't want things stretched or cropped to fit a widescreen television, so I'm assuming that's the way it was shown on TV, and it has more of the image, so that's the way I want to watch it. So where's my remote? I'll change that now. Alright, we're on the menu screen now, and it says there, go back to aspect ratio select. So I like that they give the option for people who really don't care about getting all the image, and they want the full widescreen filling up the whole TV. Then that option is there for them, so I'm glad that I can kind of get to see the full whack, so to speak. And yes, it is actually a full, what some people would call 4:3, 133:1 aspect ratio, so there are black bars on the sides. In the preview image it looked a little less extreme than this, but that's fine. I certainly want to see all of it, so looking forward to this very much. Someone's Watching Me. Feels like a John Carpenter film already, I have to say. Okay, 1 minute 55 seconds into the film, and we've already established in the first scene that already there's a woman who's being stalked slash, peeped on by a guy in an opposite tower in a city, and he's calling her and she's saying she's going to move, she's had enough of all this, and he's saying don't go, don't leave me. And then we have the title sequence, which I loved. I thought it was kind of like a low rent kind of Hitchcock opening titles, so just take a look at this. I love it. Awesome. The pizza is ready. Slightly burned, just how I like it.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We're out.
And now I properly start to watch the film. Okay, it is 1 minute past 7 and I'm done with the 1978 film Someone's Watching Me, originally called High Rise. I actually watched the interview on the disc with actress Adrienne Barbeau, who stars in the film as Sophie, the friend of the main character, Lee, who's played by Lauren Hutton. And a really good interview, and she was talking about some of the background of the film. It was John Carpenter's first studio film, made with Warner Brothers, originally going to be a feature film, and then they decided to kind of demote it, I guess, to television. And he said in an interview as well on the disc that he found that he was surprised to see that he quite enjoyed the kind of studio system in a way, working with a union crew on a film and so on. And so this obviously leads right into Halloween, which I won't be covering in this marathon because I've already seen it. But I loved this. Oh my god. This was great. I wasn't expecting too much. No one ever talks about it. It might be because it has never been given much of a big release, or I don't know. The fact that it was on television. Again, she was saying in the interview that all of his films, they go to any film goes to a cinema and people go and see it again and again. It plays for a couple of months or whatever, and then it comes out in video. This was shown, one night on TV, and if you didn't see it, you didn't see it, and it would be years until it would come out on DVD and things like that, and then get a new life. So I love that this was released. The Blu-ray looked fantastic. I'm glad I watched it in the original TV aspect ratio. There's a couple of shots in there where I feel like if it was zoomed in to widescreen, you'd miss some of the detail there and the framing and things like that. Specifically a shot of the main character when she's lying down, and there's a close-up of her face as she's looking at this device on the floor. Brilliant shot. So the story actually, because I was saying at the beginning of the film, it looked like we were jumping into a story in which a woman was already getting stalked by a man who's looking at her from across the way in two different, high-rise towers. But that's kind of like the prologue to the film. And then after the title sequence, we get into another woman who's moving in to a high-rise apartment block for the first time. That is Lee, played by Lauren Hutton, who I think really makes the film for me. She's a woman who's moved from New York to LA, and she's decided to kind of start a new life for herself, and she works in TV. She gets a job very quickly where she meets Sophie, played by Adrienne Barbeau, who was Carpenter's wife, I believe, for a number of years, or at least they were together anyway. And she says that in the interview as well. For anyone who isn't aware, I was with him for quite a while, and she gets asked what was her favorite day on set of making this, of which was apparently only a 10-day shoot. And she said, probably the last day when I realized that John was interested in me for more than my acting. So that was kind of nice, even though obviously they weren't together for, a very long time, or they split up in the 80s at some point. I don't know the timeline of that she can still look back fondly on something like that. Anyway, so the film itself, we follow Lee as she, comes to a new city, to a new life, to a new apartment, a new job, and she gets these phone calls from a weird guy. And what I loved about this film is how it builds up the suspense and how it doesn't rush anything. It's only 90 minutes, it's an hour and a half, and it doesn't rush anything to the point where our main character, Lee, she isn't taking it very seriously. And I loved the actress's performance. Lauren Hutton, I think she really makes the movie for me because she's such a likable character. She's very quirky, she has her own sense of humor. She talks to herself quite a bit, which is really endearing. And I think that it would be all too easy for a character like that to become really annoying. But I just found her so likable and charming. And, to begin with, at one point she gets back to her apartment and the door's open. So she walks in and she's just like, well, if you're in here, I have to warn you, I did train with Bruce Lee before he died, And she's very playful and confident and strong in that sense. But once it gets too far, once these phone calls and these presents that she keeps receiving in the mail keep building up, it gets to her, to the point where we see a woman who is so completely rattled and emotionally traumatized by this. And I think she just did a wonderful job. There's a couple of moments where her acting is a little bit off, especially the opening scene. At one point, she seems to be looking outside like this. It just doesn't seem very realistic, But those are minor quibbles. I think she really did a fantastic job of maybe not giving an incredible dramatic performance, but giving a performance that I bought into so much that I really cared about her character. And the same can be said for Sophie as well. I think that Adrienne Barbeau is a really good actress. I enjoy her in The Fog, particularly as far as John Carpenter films go. But she's a really likable, again, personality, and it's quite notable in that this is a 1978 film, and the character of Sophie is a lesbian. And what's so great about it is that's it. It isn't kind of used for titillation. It isn't sexualized in any way, shape, or form. It's just, yeah, I'm gay. That's it, and that's just her character. And there's nothing, they kind of play with it a little bit where they're having a meal together, and Sophie says to Lee, you don't mind at all, my preference, and she's like, no, why would I be threatened by it? It's just the same as being around men who might be interested in me. It's no difference to me. So it's a real kind of a gay character who's just accepted for who she is, and this is like 40 years ago now. So I think it was one of those rare things where oh, a gay character, let's make them over the top or stereotypical. This is just a woman who happens to be gay, and that's part of her character, and that's it. So I think that was, for the time, I think, really ahead of its time. But that's neither here nor there, and it really doesn't make any difference to the movie, but I loved and appreciated that it was there in a time when perhaps that would be discouraged, or would be a call or a reason to have that really emphasized and placed into a different, kind of priority where it becomes more of a deal than it should be. Cameo from Shelby there. So anyway, so there's this guy's calling the woman and harassing her, but they play with it very smartly to the point where he hasn't threatened her at all. So the police aren't stepping in to do anything because they can't. And whether or not, especially in today's day and age, that would hold up is neither here nor there. Within the context of the movie, it means that she's still fairly helpless. She meets a man who, again, I thought was a really likable character, who would be played, I'm assuming, by Charles Cyphers, because he was the only other kind of main male character in the film. Really, really likable. Just the trio of main characters, I think, in this really make the film for me. Particularly the main character, but, I just thought that it made the film so much more enjoyable because I really cared about the characters. They seem like nice people. There's a real chemistry between all three of them, actually, between each other, and it just felt so genuine. This was this written by Carpenter? Yes, written and directed by John Carpenter. So I really think that he is almost an underrated writer in that sense, because he really makes, in a film like this, the characters so believable. And this is certainly, you could call it the John Carpenter's Hitchcock film. There's so much influence from Rear Window in this movie, with the looking through the telescopes to the other apartment block, but there's other elements in there too, the surveillance, the recording that's going on, the manipulation of all the electronics in the building, the way this guy is terrorizing this woman without touching her. They go into that kind of idea of he needs to keep his distance. He wants to get to you. He wants to hurt you without touching you, without getting close. He wants to keep his distance, and I almost feel like at times he wants to get caught, And there's this whole mystery: who is he, And they toy with that throughout the film, and you do get the obligatory we found him, and then you're like, well, there's 20 minutes of the movie left, so it's probably not him, So you have to try to figure things out. I was wondering if there was going to be some big twist, and it was someone we'd already seen in the movie. And then it reaches its climax, and there's even a bit in the interview with Barbeau where she talks about kind of her criticism of the film, where there's a scene in which a character gets killed, and our main character Lee is looking through a telescope, and she's saying, why wouldn't she just run out the door to try and save the person? Why does she have to stay there and just look through the telescope? And I agree with it. That doesn't feel like a realistic character decision, but it makes for a very dramatic cinematic moment when you're focusing on her eye looking at the telescope and seeing this person get murdered, and it kind of reverses the role of, she's the one being watched, and now she's being made to watch something else. So I think it's a conceit I can live with and let slide. Some of the cinematography is really, really good. I really enjoyed the way that he shot this. Nothing too elaborate, but just the way that the camera moves at certain times and builds with the suspense, and also just frames things in a aesthetically pleasing way. Just the way that it looks is very well shot. Overall, fantastic film. I'm going to say it. I know people don't think very highly of this one, but I thought it was a great thriller, built really heavily on a foundation of likable characters and genuine, believable chemistry between those characters. So really a testament to the actors here. The plot is nothing you've seen before. There's nothing new to a plot like this, but I think that going into that voyeurism aspect and also just the way that the character, I feel, believably reacted to being watched. The title, someone's watching me, with an exclamation mark, I think it even says. Yeah, that's the official title. There is an exclamation mark in there. I was almost expecting at one point for it to turn around and going, someone's watching me, damn it, to be just really over the top, but I think it plays it really down the line in a way that I just think really made for a great film, actually. And also, a very, very minor note, if you remember, I was pointing out that the back of the Blu-ray of Dark Star had printed on it, disc made in Mexico. This has the same thing. You can't really see it because the cover is dark, but because the Dark Star cover is white, you can see it. So I guess it's just one of those things that certain Blu-ray cases have American release is the printed in Mexico for some reason. Anyway, so this is a fantastic Blu-ray. I'm definitely going to watch this film again and again. So this is my current favorite for sure, and I was probably the one I was least looking forward to. So that's really cool. So big thumbs up for that. And a very minor thing I want to talk about, and I'll forget things as we go along. But Assault on Precinct 13 from last night. Huge vibes of Night of the Living Dead. I don't know why I didn't mention it before. And, you know, just the whole setup and the fact that the street gang felt like the zombies. This kind of like, you just almost faceless. You don't really see many of them in close-up or anything once the siege begins. Kind of like a faceless kind of just collective of evil. And I believe I read online that Carpenter had been influenced by Night of the Living Dead, which just, you know, seems like a no-brainer, really. But yeah. Just wanted to cover that very briefly before we go into the next film. It is currently 7:13, so hopefully I might be done with the next film by 9 o'clock roughly, which means I should be able to get another film in. I really wish I'd started earlier, I really do. But I'm glad that I watched this film when it got dark, because this feels like a kind of a night movie, you know, so that's cool. I like that. Had the candle going, you know, had my Jack Daniels, so that's cool.